Hello, my name is James Elizondo again, and here is my second part on how the universe works and my theory about it. Now, talked about how I think the universe is set up. Now let's go to gravity. This is what I believe how gravity is set up and how it works in the universe. Now, everything in the universe attracts everything else in the universe. Now, the Earth attracts a lot more stuff because its mass is bigger, and you can feel and visually see the pull of gravity with the Earth in comparison to me. I'm attracting everything in this room because there's a sense of attraction between everything, but obviously my mass is not that big, so, I can't pull things towards me. Now, I believe that has very little to do with actual mass. Mass does play a major role in it, but the mass of an object does not entirely matter, in the sense of if a mass is neutrally charged, it's not going to pull anything, because I think everything in the universe, especially gravity is based on uneven charges. Positive charges when you become neutral. That's what I believe it is. So let's just take me for example. I'm positively charged, right? Alright, let's just say I'm positively charged, a million zeros and one. Now, I obviously need electrons to make myself neutral if I'm positively charged. So, I'm going to pull some electrons from a shoe, or from my carpet, or my door, or anything. Obviously my size isn't that big, and my needing electrons to make my body neutral isn't going to be that massive compared to the Earth, so you're not going to visually see the pull of me trying to suck these electrons in. Now, the Earth, for example, is trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of times bigger than me. So, let's just say the ratio of being positively charged is the same, a million zeros and 1% positively charged. Now, it's going to need a lot more electrons because obviously its mass is trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions times larger than mine. So, for me example, I have some electrons, and electrons, as they do in bonding with elements, but electrons don't bond when it comes to gravity. They just kind of pull them and suck them towards each other. Now, the Earth obviously needs some of my electrons, some of everything's electrons, because it's trying to become neutral. Everything in the universe, as we know, tries to become neutral. That's how we get everything bonds together. Now, so it sucks me in, it sucks some of my electrons towards it, sucks some of my chairs, my bed, the camera, everything. It just sucks some of the electrons towards the center of its body. Now that's how you can feel and see gravity. It's not because it has a mass and it's pulling in other masses. That's a bit ridiculous. That's almost magic. It's in the sense of everything wants to become neutral. So if it sees some electrons, especially me, it's going to see me and starts pulling me towards it. Now the ground stops it because it's a solid, obviously. So it's not that massive. It doesn't need that many electrons like maybe Jupiter, where my body would crush and my electrons be pushed even farther down towards the core. Now, you're saying, well, how does this work? Well, let me explain. Let's just take two heliums, for example, because they're small, very small elements, and they'd be easier to explain. Now, they're made up of neutrons, protons, and electrons. Now, in order for this attraction to work, for everything in the universe to have a pull towards each other, be attracted towards each other, let's just say this helium's electrons and these helium's electrons see the opposite helium's protons. Now, what are the electrons? They're already neutral. This element is already neutral. But, in a sense, these electrons don't care. They're very greedy, or they just want something more. Now, this helium, both the heliums are like, you know what, if I share, in the sense of just shoot them towards each other, just shoot the electrons, make it think like it's going to belong to the other element, we're in a sense just swapping electrons, just swapping them in a sense, so we're going to stay neutral, we're going to stay the same. So, I'm not off any worse, I'm not off any less, but, why not do it just to do it, in a sense. And that's how every element, everything in the world thinks. So these elements are going to shoot these electrons towards the one electron over here and one electron over here. They stay neutral because the charge is the same. Now, these electrons, obviously, as we know, electrons are negative, and every charge doesn't like to be the same. Like two negative magnets have poles, and if you put them together, they're obviously not going to go together. But if you use force to push them, you can push them so they can touch or even cross each other's path. Now, these electrons pass each other, right? Now, when they get there, they're like, well, they're still almost in the rotation of each element, but they can't go back because electrons are stopping them. Like I said, they don't want to go together. If there's no force, then they're not going to go together. So each thing kind of gets sucked together. They just go towards each other, and they can't separate. That's another atom comes, and they do the same thing with the with the electron. Now you're like, well, how does that work? How do you make energy? How does energy come? How do things just don't magically start floating everywhere? I don't magically just instantaneously feel like I'm going to float and I'm like, oh, I want to go out my window, so I'll walk out my window. Well, let's go back to what elements are made out of. Elements are made out of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Well, let's go to the neutron. What does the neutron do? According to every scientist, about every scientist, they just make up mass. You know, they just make up weight. Well, let's just go back to another scientist. Let's go to Einstein. Einstein says any mass can be turned into energy. Now, how do you fling an electron so it has enough power to go past a negative charge and move? Well, neutrons turn into energy. The atom turns part of the neutron, maybe a millionth of it, maybe a thousandth of it, I don't know, into energy, just pure energy, and it'll give enough energy to this electron to cross each other. So, each atom has inside of it energy to make its own gravity. So the electrons pass each other, bringing along, this electron gets shot out, bringing along this because it's part of this, and it wants to stay neutral, just in case this thing flings away, so it's staying. Same with this, and then the electrons cross, and with each atom's getting pulled together. That's how everything in the universe is attracted to everything else in the universe. But in the sense of the world, it's so much bigger that it's going to be pulling more electrons, more of my electrons out of my cells and everything else, that I'm going to actually go towards the center of the earth, and I'm going to feel it, and then you can actually visually see it. Instead of myself seeing, you know, pulling towards everything else in this room. You're not going to see it as much because my body is not as massive as the earth. Now, that is my theory of gravity, and, well, that's episode number 2 done, and a couple more, and I will be done. My name is James Elizondo, and this is how I think the universe is set up.